when you've got high cortisol levels, it's from an evolutionary perspective, your body thinks something very bad is going to happen. And we have not progressed much from hunter-gatherer, from how our brain and body connect and the messages and what we think is happening.
Welcome to Midlife Unraveled, the podcast that takes you on a journey through the twists and turns of midlife. I'm your host, Anita Gilbert, and I've transitioned from the corporate world of investment banking to become the proud owner of a yoga and Pilates studio. Together, we're going to navigate the exhilarating roller coaster that is midlife. Each episode, we dive deep with a seasoned expert to rediscover and redefine how to live our best during this life-changing period. Join us every Tuesday for new episodes, brimming with wisdom, insights, inspiration, and a laugh along the way. So strap in, because Midlife Unraveled is about to redefine the way you embrace midlife. Subscribe today and take this journey with us. Our guest today, Nereda Merrin, shares some great tips about nutrition. And these are all kept quite positive. So you're not going to walk away with things you shouldn't be doing. You're going to walk away with some really positive steps to put into place. I hope you enjoy.
Sure.
Nereda, I am so pleased to welcome you to Midlife Unraveled.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
It's exciting. You come from a background in sports science before training in nutrition and building that business to now top it off, you're studying psychology.
I am.
It's like the perfect mix because it's looking at not only what we eat, but why we eat, which is so, so important. And this is great for our talk today because this gives you a really in-depth picture of exactly what we're talking about today, which is nutrition in midlife.
Yes.
So I'm very excited to get started on this. So let's start by having a chat about how do our nutrition needs change in midlife? You know, when we compare what we did in our sort of 20s and 30s, once we get into that sort of perimenopause, menopause stage, what changes?
Yeah. Okay. So look, one of the ways we can sum this up is that our body becomes less tolerant of what we once were able to do, which was to eat a lot of or nutrient deficient filler,
Right.
which would be, simple carbohydrates, your alcohol. And by simple carbohydrates, I mean, all your white breads and pastas, all your lollies and ice creams and stuff.
Like
we used to be all the fun, all the amazingly fun and tasty stuff. Our body just doesn't process as well. But then it also has needs that need to be satisfied because certain parts of our metabolism, how our muscles work and how we generate energy starts to, I suppose, drop away or not work as well as it used to. I'm not saying that this is a sudden decline and one day you wake up and you're losing a heap of muscle that's visible in the mirror. You don't have any energy and your digestive system has stopped working on you. This is all gradual and it starts to happen from about our 30s and we really start noticing it in similar timing to perimenopause.
Right. Does that also mean that our take-up of different nutrients is different?
Yes.
Does that change? So do we need to eat zinc for us to have the same level of zinc absorption?
Yeah. So if we were to, the better example to use is probably B vitamins.
Okay.
So it's well documented that, as you get older, your ability to take up B vitamins. Start again.
Yeah.
So it's well documented that as you get older, your ability to take up and absorb your B vitamins drops off.
Okay.
And the same for, as you said, zinc. And for some people, it also affects iron absorption. So, yeah, all these things that used to just be like picked up, starts to get a lot harder on your body. And so that's why you don't have as much room for nutrient deficient foods, because what you're putting in, you have to leave as much room as possible for the wholesome foods and the nourishing foods, because it doesn't work quite as well as it used to.
And it creeps up. I think that's the thing that gets, like, it's been probably happening for a number of years, and then suddenly we turn around and go, oh my God, what's happening?
What's happened to you?
Realize it.
No, because it's slow, and it's slow from the start of your 30s. And so you're not even really thinking about perimenopause then. You're not thinking about what's coming for me in my late 40s or early 40s. And like one of the key areas for that is around muscle loss. So as we age, we have less ability to build and maintain muscle, which means we have more daily protein needs. We lose from like the age of 30 on a decade per decade basis, we lose 3 to 8% of our muscle mass.
A lot. When you start looking at
a lot, because by the time you're 50, you could have lost like 16% of your muscle mass.
That's huge.
And that is what starts to contribute to weight gain and slower metabolism and, strength. And then as you sort of, tiptoe up through your 60s and 70s, it's then contributing to fragility.
Right. And what proteins are there that we need to increase?
So we need to take in a majority of our essential amino acids. So the proteins that you need to increase are your lean proteins. Actually, let's start that again. Proteins are really complex. This is for you, not for the recording.
Okay.
Proteins are really complex. So it's made up of your amino acids. There's essential ones and non-essential ones. The essential ones you can only get from what you eat. And I think it'd be too much to go through them, the amino acids individually. So it might be, the question might be better as...
is it plant-based or animal-based proteins that does it make a difference? Maybe that's the question.
Yeah, you don't absorb them well from plants. I can tell people that.
Okay. I'm just going to clap so we know where in the recording this is.
Yeah. All right.
Girls are about to come in the door, but anyway, they'll hopefully be quiet. Okay, so if we're looking at increasing protein, like he's mentioned, is this animal based proteins, or is this plant-based proteins? Like, I'm thinking for the vegetarians out there, are they still able to get as good a source of protein as anybody else who eats meat?
Yeah. Okay, so it is harder to get the protein that you need from plants, simply because a lot of the time there's less protein in a plant-based a plant or a plant-based product.
Okay.
For the amount that you get from it.
Yeah.
So it is easier.
If you're eating plant-based proteins, would you have to eat then substantially more in order to get the same amount of protein that your body can process?
Yeah. So say you're trying to maintain muscle mass, the best way to do that is going to be from lean animal protein or your dairy protein, so the whey protein side of things. Your body absorbs that protein better, and there's more of it in a concentrated form.
Is there anything that we can take to aid that absorption?
It's not so much what you can take, but it's how, it's when you time it and when you eat it. So say you're wanting to build muscle mass and maintain muscle mass, your body's most open to absorbing that in like a half hour to hour period after exercise.
Right.
Now, of course, you're not going to be able to do that
because that's
all the time.
Time in, like when you're planning to exercise, you know that the time to eat that steak sandwich
will be just after it.
Just afterwards. That's awesome.
So it's a good time to have if you are open to having a protein shake, that's a good time to have a whey protein shake. Now, if you have, morally or ethically, you can still have a plant-based protein shake. It just doesn't necessarily get absorbed as well.
So this is probably, we're maybe going down a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's fascinating. There are so many protein powders around at the moment, and people are putting them into juices and putting them into coffee and everything else. Are they all equal, or is it whey protein we need to be looking out for?
Are they all equal?
Well, obviously they're not equal. That's probably...
No. Okay, so the protein powders, when you buy them, you're looking for ones that are as pure as possible. If they're, a whey protein, you're looking for ideally ones that are grass-fed sources.
Okay.
If it's a collagen, if it's a collagen, it doesn't really matter whether it's marine-based or bovine. They both will do the same job. Collagen will generally be... No, that's okay. Collagen will generally be more expensive than a whey protein. Collagen doesn't absorb better. It mixes into hot things better.
Without going lumpy.
Without going lumpy or powdery in your mouth. Just mixes in well. So that's the one that people are adding to their coffees and so forth.
Powder will give us this additional protein that we're after.
Yeah. Your body does not necessarily, if you feed yourself collagen, it is not going, oh, Nereda, thanks for that. I'm just going to put that to my nails and then I'm going to put it to my skin.
I wish it would.
I know. Wouldn't that be great? It's going, thanks for the protein. I'm going to use that as I see fit.
Right.
And if you're in protein deficit, where you're not getting enough on a daily basis, it will use that first for things like muscle, rebuilding cells, healing, and so forth.
The essential things.
And then you might see a difference in your skin. Generally, people see a difference at the moment from what they're where we've gotten to with research. The difference comes from the fact that in general, you're boosting your protein levels and there's enough to go to skin and nails.
Right. So we need to make sure that we are getting enough, that we tick off all the boxes for all the essential bodily function.
Yeah.
Then if we want the benefits for our skin, we have to be making sure that we get enough. So how much is enough? Is there a benchmark that we need to look at? Or
look, it's all different depending on where you look, which is very helpful for individuals. And that's where a lot of confusion comes from. But so for a woman in, midlife, there is research coming out that you want to be having between 1.2 and 1.6 grams of protein per kilo of body weight.
Okay.
So this, for say your average 70 kilo person, will be between about 28 grams to 37 grams per main meal. And you might break bits of that off by having snacks. So you bring it down in your main meal. But it comes up to being, so it's generally, you're in the low hundreds. So I think at the 1.6 grams per kilogram for a 70 kilo person, it's about 112 grams of protein.
And what does that look like if you're looking at a steak?
Yes. What does that look like?
Is that a
So you don't want to have too much all at once because your body can only absorb so much, and they're still trying to decide how much that might be. It used to be said that it was between 25 and 30 grams, but they've pushed that up. A steak and again, it depends on how big it is. So I think 125 grams of a lean, like a fillet of beef, because that's all I really want you having because it's low fat, is about 30 grams of protein, and that's quite small. That's like size of the palm, and about 2 centimeters thick. And it's sort of similar for like chicken's a bit lower. If you look towards something like, your little tin of, like your 75-gram tin of tuna, that's about 17 or 13. It's about 17 grams of protein.
What are the best sources of protein? Like what's the highest?
That are healthy, so the healthiest ones for you. So you want to look for lean proteins, because then you're satisfying a number of things that are important during those midlife years and throughout sort of the perimenopause, menopause process. Because during that time, our inflammation levels and oxidative stress levels in our body tend to go up, because the estrogen that used to help with that, because it had anti-inflammatory properties, is dropping away. So you want to eat to more of a Mediterranean diet, which means a lot of plant-based products, legumes. And when you are eating your proteins, they need to be lean, so you're not ticking up the inflammatory properties of the food. So great things for that are, salmon, small portions of lean beef, chicken breast, white fish, prawns are all good.
That's so
good. Yeah. So there's lots for you to choose for, and there's lots for you to for you to be able to adapt and fit into your diet.
You don't have to be eating a steak every day. It can be.
No. You'd want to be having you might have a portion of lean red meat, say 2 to 3 times a week.
Okay.
That tends to work well for women who aren't vegetarian, who maybe are still bleeding a little bit through on and off through menopause, or actually through perimenopause, sorry. And there's a lot of benefits to having a little bit of red meat.
Okay.
But then the rest can be made up with fish and your poultry styles.
So just to clarify, when we're looking at a Mediterranean diet, are we looking at very much the animal proteins plus lots of vegetables, lots of salads? Is that essentially it, or is there something else in there as well?
There's olive oil.
Okay.
So it's good to have olive oil with each of your meals.
In olive oil or adding it
cooking in olive oil is fine. If you're having a salad.
If you cook with olive oil, it doesn't affect the quality?
No.
Okay, that's great.
No, it's quite heat tolerant. There was a rumor that it didn't work, but now the olive oil companies have come out and gone, no, it's fine.
Well, that's good to know.
I know. But it is essentially a Mediterranean diet is, it's a lot of, it's whole grains. It's a lot of vegetables, it's legumes, and a little bit of lean protein.
So we shouldn't be forgetting the bread and pasta.
We shouldn't be forgetting the whole grains. So
why does pasta fit in? Because when I think Mediterranean, I think spag bowl.
Yeah. Look, they're there. but you want to, that's where portion comes into it. And a lot of us overeat those foods. And as we get older and we're not growing, and there's a lot of research around the fact that our activity levels drop off in midlife, slowly but surely. And it's not necessarily because, we act or we make the decision for that to happen. Life gets in the way, or we're tired because we've had multiple night sweats and so forth. So or family commitments are taking up our time. So there's this drop in activity level because of life. So that's where, and probably one of the key areas where portion matters as you go through midlife, because it's really easy to overeat your whole grains, and by whole grains, if you're having them as pasta, that's like your wholemeal pastas or your lentil or chickpea based pastas.
I suppose it's in that Italian way where, where traditionally they do eat the pasta dish as a starter and then they go on to the protein and salad. So I suppose re-educating our mind that that's the sort of portion size that we should be looking at.
Yeah, small is better. Small is better. And because in your whole day, so what is constituted as a portion of a whole grain or a starchy or a simple carbohydrate or a starchy carbohydrate is, a piece of bread is a serve or a portion. They're used interchangeably. You have 4 to 6 you have 6 within a day. That's from an Australian dietary guidelines perspective. Most people, if you look at the typical Australian diet, you'll have some sort of cereal for breakfast, which means, that's a serve of cereal. Many people eat way more than a serve of cereal. So it's like 45 grams or 35 grams, which is like a tiny bit in the middle of the bowl, but most people eat 2.5 times of that. So you've got 2.5 serves gone there. You might have toast with that. That's 3.5. Lunch. Are you having a wrap or are you having like a cafe sandwich? So by the time, before you've even gotten to snacks, crackers before dinner, if you're having something like that, or, your rice or pasta, you might be up over the amount of carbohydrates that your body needs.
Yeah.
From a whole grains perspective, it's one of the easiest things to overeat. And it's one of the things that I probably work most with people to I suppose, manage and get a high awareness around, because if you can manage that side of things, everything else tends to fall into place.
Is there a preference to what time of the day we should eat more carbohydrates? Do we burn them off more if we eat them more for breakfast and not for dinner, or is there any preference?
I think the better way to look at how you eat is the window which you eat within, because you want your digestive system to have around 12 hours rest, and you want a good 2 hours before you go to bed.
Okay.
To allow for digestion and all that process so that there's full rest. So is there, does it matter when you eat them? Oh, it so depends. It would be better to think about it as portion size.
Okay.
And eating within that window, because for different people, it's going to be a different outcome. Some people can eat like nothing happens when they eat, a big bowl of pasta at night or a massive amount of potatoes. For other people who potentially have different things going on with blood sugar, it may matter.
Right.
And so you'd want to be eating, less of those things in general or earlier in the day. At all times when you're eating, whole grains and the carbohydrate thing, it's good to dress those foods because then you can keep your blood sugars balanced.
And is that?
I would say it's more about eating in a window. It's old thinking with regards to I only eat carbs up until lunchtime.
Right. Okay. Is there any difference if we are looking at having whole grain bread? Is there a difference between sourdough and your standard multigrain or wholemeal loaf? How is the sourdough piece into the rest of it?
Authentic sourdough.
Proper sourdough. The expensive loaves.
Yeah, the really expensive one.
Is it worth it, or should we just?
Is it worth it? It would be a minor difference. Like it's good for, it may have slightly slower digestive properties. It may, because of sort of the process of how we create sourdough, then it may have slightly less sugars available.
Right.
But ultimately, portion size is going to matter more than quality, especially when we're talking about those higher price beds. I'm not talking about like when you're eating those cheaper low price breads, they are basically just dissolving and converting very quickly to sugar within your system. So, and that's the thing you want to slow.
Yeah. And is rye bread better than having a wholemeal bread? Because it's so dark.
I think it just depends. I think I'd actually have to look into that for you. I tend to take a view when working with people. We go from a macro approach down to a micro when we're not seeing enough change.
Right.
And so we start off more at so you're eating this supermarket bread with a lot of preservatives and so forth in it. Let's switch across to one with less preservatives. So one ideally from a bakery with, grains and so forth and a slower digestion time and breaking down time. And then we'd look at the portion and how much you're having of that. And then we go into, okay, we need to make more of a change. Do we go into the minutiae of rye versus sourdough versus other breads?
Right.
And I think that's where sometimes people really you can get quite caught up in that level of detail, and it can end up making you quite unhappy.
Yes.
Because you're like, well, I can't make the right choice. So the best thing from, a breads and a pasta perspective is as good a quality as you can afford.
Okay.
Not white. So ideally a multigrain or a wholemeal. If you can do, your higher end, pure or proper sourdough, that's great.
Yeah.
And manage your portion, especially going through perimenopause, because your body is starting to have a harder time potentially managing a high glucose load, which breads and pastas and so forth, if you have too much of them.
Makes perfect sense.
Does that make sense?
About dairy, because we hear a lot about dairy.
Yeah.
Just give me 1 second.
Oh. Who was noisy?
Girls are cooking in the kitchen.
Shut up.
I'd love to talk to you about dairy. So this is something we hear really, really important when it comes to bone health, which is obviously something that's top of mind for most women this age. When we hear of osteoporosis and osteopenia. So what should we be looking at in terms of dairy?
Okay. Again, this is an individual, so this is very individual choice. A lot of women have the thought process that dairy will make me fat. And so they don't and haven't been eating a lot of dairy.
I have to add, I love cheese.
Yeah, that's another thing in time. So, as a gender, we have demonized dairy and have thought it to be quite evil.
I do remember
to our weight loss and weight management goals. The thing is that research has shown women or people who eat dairy and full fat dairy within the bounds of dietary guidelines have better weight management and better health in general.
Wow.
Yeah, it's great.
Because full fat was like
demonized. I know. But if you're eating it within, so if you don't have a cholesterol problem, you're eating it within the bounds of dietary guidelines and it's not getting in the way of you eating other foods that you also need, which is what can happen sometimes with toddlers, but that's completely different.
Yeah.
Then it is a very easy and efficient source of the calcium you need to maintain bone density. And I do prescribe to maintaining dairy from a yogurt, milk and cheese perspective. If you have cholesterol issues or you are prone to overeat cheese, then I tend to switch you to low fat.
So low fat cheese will still give us the benefits.
And it gives you more protein.
Okay, that's good to know. I have to ask this. Definitely is about soy. How does soy milk compare with your full fat cow's milk or your almond milks when we're in midlife? Because I know things change from when we were 25 and 30 was very different for what our needs were. But now in midlife, should we be looking at soy milk as a preference?
It is good to have, as your estrogen drops away, it's good to add phytoestrogens, which is what you get with soy and soy products. They are generally, from a milk perspective, you want to look for one that's fortified and no added sugar.
What does that mean?
Because they don't. So fortified, it doesn't contain calcium. So they have to fortify it with calcium. So if you switch from a milk product, like a real milk product, to soy because you think that's better for you, while you may get protein from it, which is great, you have to get a fortified one to get the calcium benefit. And is it less calcium benefit? Slightly less.
So should I be swapping
and you mightn't absorb it as well because it's fortification. And
so should I be swapping my skim latte for a soy latte? The big question.
Look, I wouldn't necessarily, because I think the benefits of the skim latte probably outweigh the benefits of the phytoestrogens you're potentially getting in your soy milk. And you have to have a lot of phytoestrogen to see a difference.
So I'll be switching back from my soy latte now to my skim latte. I'm thinking
I'm doing something so good for both. Look, and if you noticed a difference, then maybe that's all you need at this point. But
I'm not sure one latte is going to do this.
No. So if you're going to be choosing, on your health, your milk, it's a substance that it naturally has calcium. It sits within a matrix. Your body will absorb that more easily than a fortified product. And, in that sense, each nutritionist and dietitian is different in their views on milk and alternate milks.
Yeah.
So I could say I am a huge advocate for simple, practical nutrition and not making it hard, because midlife is already hard.
That's so true.
It is busy and it is hard.
Yeah. We don't need to know that we should be going out and spending huge amounts of money on all these bizarre ingredients, and then we have to eat different meals to the rest of the family. We don't need to be doing that. It needs to be simple and straightforward.
Yeah. And the only thing I would
changes where we can.
And the only thing I would say, sorry, I talked straight over the top of you, which is really rude. The only thing I would say is the only time you may want to change what you're doing from a milk perspective is if you are having, you do get something going on from a gut perspective, and that will be from the lactose.
Mm-hmm.
You're lactose intolerant, or you don't have enough of the digestive enzymes which is the lactase, to break down the lactose. And that can be something that comes on as you age, because enzymes can go down. And so our intolerances can potentially go up.
Right.
So rude. The whole aging thing.
It is
so rude.
Actually,
it's so rude. So you could, before you go to an alternate milk, like almond, and definitely don't go to oat, because oat's just like drinking sugar water.
Okay.
For your system.
Right.
Tasty, but it converts really quickly to blood glucose or blood glucose, spikes your levels, and can start to cause a cycle that will lead you down a path of insulin resistance and then into diabetes.
So we should really be calling it oat sugar, not oat milk.
Potentially, but don't tell the brands who are making it and selling it. They might get sad.
Yeah, we get very sad. We won't mention that.
Or come looking after me, or come looking for me and be like, that's not correct. I'm like, wait. Mashed up oats. So I tend to, if you have no cholesterol problems, if you're not trying to lose a heap of weight, I would say full cream milk, because you're not going to have much. You can have it in your coffee.
Yeah.
And it really satisfies appetite. It suppresses appetite. Full cream milk suppresses appetite because it's got a little bit more. It's got fats, it's got protein, and it's got the calcium you need. Tastes better in a coffee. If you're trying to lose a lot of weight and we're really pulling calories out, or you have a cholesterol problem, low fat. If you have an intolerance, try lactose-free first before moving. And then soy is next best, and then everything else runs a long way behind.
Okay. Okay, that's really good to know.
I hope that's helpful. I think we've gotten stuck on milk quite a little bit.
I know. I've got one other question I had, really important question actually, was about so many women in this time of life experience a lot more fat around the tummy
Yes.
area. Is this something we can help control with our diet, or is this purely hormonal and we have no control?
Oh, that's
tough one.
It's a complex question, because as our hormones change, so as it's either a case of estrogen dominance, or like as the ratios of the hormones change, we tend to get into fat storage mode. Yeah. So that's the first thing that's one of the things that contributes to that change in body shape at that time of life. And you need to be working with either in like your a specialist with regards to your hormone levels, to try and, especially if it's accumulating quickly, get on top of it quickly, because that is a hormone.
So that's if we have that sudden weight increase and we're looking at it more,
and you're looking at it and you're like, what the hell is that happening there? Things that can help get it under control are you might get a result from HRT. You might also want to look at lifestyle factors, because perimenopause can it sits in this place in our life now that's generally like we're under quite a bit of stress. Yeah. Most women, like you're working, you're running a household, there's a lot of demands on you. Yeah. And so you can have quite high cortisol levels. And that also can show up around your belly and like, that area? Back fat. Yeah. Back fat, yeah. So it can show up in that area as well, because when you've got high cortisol levels, from an evolutionary perspective, your body thinks something very bad is going to happen. And we have not progressed much from hunter-gatherer, from how our brain and body connect and the messages and what we think is happening in those. So when we get really stressed, we're either being chased by a lion or we're about to go into famine. And if it's chronic stress, like cortisol release or war, so we lay down and conserve body fat. Right. So then you've got two factors working against you keeping the shape that you once loved. Yes. Or at least liked. Yeah, and you would like to continue. And then you realize you should not have complained about it 5 years ago. You look in the mirror and go, what was I complaining about? So that's two things. And then you might also have the lower level of, you have the dropping away of muscle mass and potentially activity that would generate muscle mass. And that also means that your metabolism takes a bit of a hit. Yeah. And so if you don't tweak your diet, then you start accumulating body fat. And it will either go around your middle, because that's what happens, or it'll start to go elsewhere, like depending on what your profile is or fat accumulation profile is. So yes, diet can be attributing to it, but it's sort of like there's a lot more. It's like an ecosystem. Yeah. Of what's happening to you, and it's one of the things that feed into everything else. It's surprising because I thought it was so much more driven by diet, but after chatting to you, I realized that diet is only one part of it. We have our activity, we have our protein, we have our muscle mass, we have so many other factors contributing to that. One more question: why is it that we in midlife seem to accumulate fat around the center of our bodies, where previously
maybe perhaps when on your thighs and legs, and then suddenly in midlife you've got the tummy and the back fat happening. Why is that?
That is related to the changes in hormones.
That's it.
Where your body.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just putting it down there rather than other places.
This has been so fascinating. I could actually talk to you for so much longer.
I'm like looking at my notes going, I have a lot more to say and things to
I
advise.
know. I think we're going to have to do a part 2, Nereda. Thank you so much for coming on. I love the really simple advice that's easy to integrate, and it's really practical. Everybody's busy. Nobody wants to have to spend hours and huge amounts of money shopping for random ingredients that they have to include, or taking a whole bunch of supplements. So having some practical steps that we can all take and integrate so easily is fantastic.
I would say, just to add to that, one of the things I would add as from a supplement perspective, as you're moving through this period, is magnesium.
Okay.
Because there's
or sleeping, or
just because there's a lot, like magnesium impacts over 250 of metabolic functions.
Wow.
And systems, and so it's very busy, very necessary. And with soil, like mineral depletion and the levels of stress that we're under, it is one of the things that I tend to, blanket recommend, especially as you go through perimenopause and so forth, because it can impact so many things. It can help with energy levels. It can help with the muscle twitches that you might be getting. It can help with sleep, and it can help with healing and all. It just helps with so many things within your body. So I would say that is a good supplement to add in. And if you are a person that is not getting to 4 to 5 vegetable serves per day, 2 to 3 pieces of, or 2 pieces of fruit, I err on the lower side of fruit.
So that's where we find our magnesium naturally, is in those vegetables and fruit.
If you tend to find it in things like it's actually in things like chocolate and cacao, and I know that's a good thing. But then you've got it's got to be dark, really dark.
Okay.
And I just lost my train of thought, but it depends on where the food's coming from, what the magnesium level is of the soil that it's coming from, and so forth. And it's just one of those things that is quite depleted.
And we wouldn't really know. So taking one...
No, you're not going to know. So taking one supplement's not going to hurt you. And the other thing is, if a quick way to look at, do I need just a good multivitamin?
Okay.
Could be helpful, especially if you're a fussy eater and you're not getting enough vegetables in.
Just so you cover all the bases.
It's like a little insurance policy. It just gives you a little, just a little base.
Fantastic.
That might tidy up some rough edges.
Yeah, and also when we have those days when, it has been kind of food on the run, you don't feel like, oh my gosh, I have to, you are getting everything. Your body is getting everything that you need on that baseline level. So we don't need more stress. So
no, so that can help. And then there's lots of other things you can do over time. Yeah. But that's more of your looking at the individual and picking out what's your main, what's during this time while you're going through perimenopause and you're in midlife, what is the biggest symptom of that for you, and then addressing that symptom rather than a blanket, let's just improve my life. Because it's really hard to make dietary behavior change and lifestyle change, all the factors that go into having a healthy functioning body. it's so much more than just the food that you eat. It's
very true.
When you eat it, it's your sleep, it's the level of stress in your life, the level of connection that you have with others. Like, all these little things come together to create this environment that you exist in. And we need to balance out food, but then we also need to look at the other things as well and see where the deficiencies really lay. And that's blood tests and so forth.
Yeah.
So,
and there's factors that need to work together. And if one of those, everything kind of falls apart. So there's a lot to think about, but at least if you're like, no, okay, so one of the key things is my muscle is dropping away. And if I can do anything, I'm going to try and even out my protein or get my protein to where it needs to be. And maybe we concentrate on that for a while, and then we fine. I feel like we've got that under control, so let's move on to something else.
Move on to the next thing.
Yeah. I think that's looking at things in a way that's manageable and it's not overwhelming. And it's a step-by-step process to really get things working, in the right way again. So, it is a process.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And with the right team, nothing's not fixable.
Yeah, exactly. So just speaking of that, can you please share with everybody where they can find you?
Yeah. You can find my website at The Balanced Body, and I will provide just email contact details and my phone number in the show notes. So you could always reach me by those as well. And I'm also on Instagram under The Balanced Body Australia.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nereda. This was fascinating.
I hope it was helpful.
Tips personally to take away now. First one, we'll be swapping out that soy milk latte.
You're like, oh my God, I can go back to real milk.
I'm actually quite excited. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like, share and subscribe so you can stay updated with more from Midlife Unraveled. To see more Midlife Unraveled, follow us at midlifeunraveled.com or at Midlife Unraveled on Facebook and Instagram. We'll see you soon.